All units 10-3. It now appears as though shots are being fired. All officers use caution. It has been confirmed. Suspects are armed and are firing at police.
660 on the air. Northwest Sequel Signal 10. Building fire. Headquarters. Northwest Sequel Fire Department. 1000 North Broadway. Towards North Park Drive in North Albany.
Multiple explosions coming from 661. Unable to get any ambulance, any reach out except for 667. Automatically go to a dirt alarm.
Welcome to Scanner School. My name is Phil Lichtenberger, and thanks to my dad, I have been in the scanner radio hobby since about the time that I could talk and walk. See, my dad, my grandfather, and even my uncle always had a scanner radio going at their homes. Their love and their knowledge of scanning that each one of them has passed down on to me, I want to transfer to you. See, my mission here on Scanner School is to pass my love and my lifetime of knowledge that I have learned about the scanner radio hobby to you. So if you are new to the hobby or a seasoned scanner listener, we aim each week to bring you something new to help you enjoy the hobby just a little bit more. And if you have any questions or are stuck and need help, I'm here for you. You can find plenty of help over on our Discord server by going to scannerschool.com/Discord, or maybe by requesting one-on-one tutoring by going to scannerschool.com/tutoring, or by submitting questions for our monthly Q&A session. All of those links and more can be found in the description of this podcast episode or by going to our website, scannerschool.com. This week, we are joined by Andrew Murphy. Andrew loves to build and work on his own antennas. So whether it's taking a commercial design, something that he has seen in a magazine or something that he has purchased himself, or whether he's taking some wire off the spool and building his own antennas, this is something that Andrew is all over. And you're going to hear about how excited and how drawn he is to tweaking and building his own antennas. Now, no pun intended here, but you don't have to feel like the antenna building is over your head, okay? This is something that anybody can start doing. Now, I'm not downplaying what Andrew is doing is simple, because it is not. But there are plans that are available that can simplify the process and give you the formulas that you need and the measurements that you need in order to build your own antenna. I was building my first antennas around the age of 14 years old, okay? If I could do it at that age, anybody can do it, no matter what your age is, okay? These are simple designs for J-poles, dipoles, whatever. I mean, it's a fun father-son project. My dad and I built our own J-pole antennas out of copper plumbing. We built them for my uncle's house. I've built J-poles out of twin lead. I've even built little disc cone antennas or dipole antennas out of nothing more than an antenna connector and some coat wire and some screws, and that's it. There's plans out there for anything. So I invite you to sit back and listen to this conversation that Andrew and I had. Again, these are conversations when I have guests on the podcast. These aren't interviews. These are discussions. These are laid back. And again, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, I am inviting you on with open arms. And I'm sure others would love to hear your story too. Scannerschool.com/guest. So without any other delay, I want to welcome Andrew Murphy onto today's podcast episode. And again, thank you, Andrew, for introducing us to a topic that we haven't yet discussed here. I think everybody's going to enjoy listening and just taking a little bit of the excitement that you bring to building and tweaking antennas, and will hopefully ignite the flame so that they go out and do the exact same thing. So without further delay, I want to welcome Andrew onto this week's podcast. Andrew, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. I appreciate it, and welcome aboard.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So really quickly, before we get into the meat and potatoes here today, why don't you introduce yourself? What is it about the scanner radio hobby that you enjoy the most right now?
I'm from Northeast Oklahoma, been living in Pryor Creek for 14 plus years. Really, what got me into scanning was listening to Storm Chasers. I was originally from Alabama, and every spring I would love to hear the ham radio guys chasing tornadoes, listening to them. That piqued my interest. And then my first scanner I got was a Bearcat, analog Bearcat. That was before everything started scanner wise going digital. And I started listening to CAL FIRE and the Forestry Fire Department, living up in near the mountains of Mount Lassen, and that's when I got my first analog scanner.
So back in the good old days, where it was just strictly analog and very
Yep.
easy to set up and program, huh?
Yep.
Excellent. So what is it that you're listening to most now?
800, 900 megahertz,
Yeah.
mostly law enforcement.
So different world then. You went from analog now to trunking, huh?
Yeah, and the thing is there was a lot of stuff that was starting to go on in my little community, and I'm the type of person that likes to keep an ear out on everything. But they started doing the interoperable after Columbine, which they switched everything to the P25 phase one tracking system. So if I wanted to listen to local police and sheriff, I had to go digital.
Gotcha. So what was your first radio that was your first digital radio? What was the first big investment you made over there?
You're gonna laugh.
No, go ahead.
My first digital scanner was a Radio Shack Pro 169 that did Motorola Smart Zone.
Okay. Pro 160 doesn't ring a bell to me. The 169.
It was an older. It's about a late early 2000, maybe late 90s model radio.
Okay. That did digital?
Yeah, that did ECAS and Motorola.
Okay. Because I had a 2069 and I hated that one. I still have it.
I still have mine too. When I go out and like I said, I have a farm and a ranch and a small transport business, and living out in the country, we don't get very good signal on our phones or TV reception with everything, that's gone digital. So I like to have my scanner up and running and to be able to listening to that's another thing that I listen to a lot is the National Weather Service.
Right, I can imagine. So it sounds like with the Storm Chasers and the National Weather Service, you're kind of right there in Tornado Alley then, huh?
Yeah, Alabama, a lot of people don't understand. Alabama is also called Dixie Alley.
Okay.
It's the Tornado Alley spans down to the southeast.
I remember watching, there was a show that I think was on National Geographic or something like that years ago. Reed Timmer was on there and a couple of the guys that did tornado chasing.
I'm not going to say nothing bad about him, but
I wasn't going that route.
Well, a lot of people ask me for my opinion about Tim Reamer, and that's why I said that. Yeah, I actually chased with Tim once or twice. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that big Yazoo tornado that they did when Discovery was doing his little TV show.
Right. It was Discovery. That's right.
Yeah. And I was, me and him both were chasing that storm and trying to help. We both have a big heart and passion to storm chase to help our fellow Americans and to learn more about tornadoes in general.
Right. So you're still doing the storm chasing? Because I only brought that up because I remember in one of the episodes they were chasing down in Alabama, and they were saying like it's a whole different world down there because you can't see anything because there's trees on the side of the roads. Like it's not open plains like it is up in Nebraska and all that.
Yeah, and well, another thing you gotta watch out is it's easy for tornadoes down in Alabama to get rain wrapped.
Ah, okay.
Wrapped by sheets of rain like a curtain. The last tornado I went chasing was in 2012 when the Moore got hit again. Moore,
Okay.
Oklahoma, was the last time I told the National Weather Office I wasn't going to chase no more, and I was house sitting for a friend of mine and their family and Moore, and her house was in that community right by the school that got hit.
Oof. So they
And
lost.
yeah, and I did not know that, but thanks to me monitoring 800 and 900 megahertz, I heard that it got just devastated, that whole little community right there.
Wow. So I'm definitely sorry to hear that, but it sounds like you definitely deserve a pat in the back, at least for being part of that part of the community and giving back to it. And storm chasing is something that I've always wanted to talk about in the podcast. I don't want to focus on there right now. Maybe we'll have you back to talk about what it's like to storm chase and go through that, if you don't mind.
I love talking about storm chasing and the 15 or 20 years that I did it. So
beautiful. I'd love to have you back to talk about that. But right now, I mean, we'll focus on what you're here to talk about and not go in the wrong direction here.
Yeah.
But you're big into building and making and setting up antennas. So is what you're telling me, though, huh?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that.
I started getting away from scanner stuff because of the cost of the newer digital radios, the Bearcats and stuff. I have an old Radio Shack handheld that I still use during the storm season, but I started using an SDR and needed better and bigger antennas than what my scanner had. So
excellent. And what kind of antennas are you running around with right now?
I got a little bit of everything. I got CB, I got dipoles for ham radio, I got a vertical telescoping sitting on a trucker mirror mount. I got a vertical, and I'm working on a phased array for a phased quarter ground wave antenna that's going to be faced together.
And what are you going to use the phase array for?
VHF.
Okay. So just basic, not anything crazy like Earth, Moon, Earth, nothing like that. You just point in one direction and use it, right?
Well, no, it's like a EME, like you said. This antenna I found online, and the guy used it for communicating on VHF single sideband.
Okay. So you're going to use it for 2 meter DX or something like that.
Then, yeah, right? I want to be able to use it more for picking other repeater single sideband and other simplex people around me.
Nice. And that's something that from a scanner radio, you're not going to be able to do, right? Because there's no sideband on any commercially available scanner radios.
Well, no, actually, I can pick up. Anything that's in the VHF UHF spectrum. I can pick up.
Right, but you can't do it from a scanner. You can do it with the SDR software.
No, actually, I could do it with a scanner.
Really? So how you?
My Radio Shack. I'm not. The only down thing about having that scanner is I can't transmit.
So which scanner are you using that has sideband on it?
It doesn't have sideband. But I could pick up simplex.
Oh, yeah.
And other VHF narrowband frequencies.
Yes.
The only thing I can't do is pick up single sideband. I might have misunderstood.
No, it's no problem because I was getting to the point where it's or to make the point that you can't really use it from a scanner, but using your SDRs, if you still want to receive sideband, like for anybody else who's out there who's listening to the podcast right now and wants to see if there's any of that stuff by them, I actually tripped across it locally here. Like I had SDR console up and I was tuning around and I'm like, boy, this is kind of in the bottom of the 2 meter band. And I tuned it in and it ended up being upper sideband. And I was pretty surprised and it was coming in really nice and clear too. So it's still alive and well on 2 meters upper sideband.
Yeah, and I had pushed away from scanners just because of the cost. And I felt like Bearcat was moving to just on the police side of things. And so I went with the SDR. And I want to tell your listeners, to me, SDR, whether it's SDR play, RTL dongle, to me, that's just like having a scanner. In fact, my SDR Uno, which is the proprietary software to my SDR play, has a scanning function.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody is like me that can't afford an expensive rig, the only other cheap VHF, UHF, airband, military band is a Bearcat 15X.
Right.
But SDR dongles, you can pick them up from Amazon for hardly nothing. Okay. And you can still monitor military band, police band, weather, etc.
Yeah, they're pretty much unfiltered Swiss Army knife receivers. They're great. Yeah.
And that's what I recommend to people who can't afford regular digital scanners.
Yep, exactly. And the software out there is a lot easier to use now than it ever has been. So there's a lot more support out for them.
Yeah, so I use DSD Plus to decode P25 and DMR.
Yeah. One of my go-tos. It's a little bit, once you've figured out how the software works and how to set it up, I like using that. And then I'll go out to a specialty piece of software after that, like Unitrunk or SDR Trunk or something like that. If I got a specific on P25 or something like that. But I like using DSD Plus. It's one of my favorites, especially with Fastlane. They keep expanding it out and making it do more with what's available. So
yeah, one of my best antennas that I listen for air bands and do a lot of air band monitoring, like center. I live close to Kansas City Center.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a lot of the aircrafts that fly over me talking to Kansas City Center, and but one of my best antennas that I use for that is a random length dipole.
Okay. So you have you got tons of antennas where you're at right now at home, and I guess, on your radios. So are you just buying them, or are you designing them, or what's the relationship with the antennas?
There's only 3 antennas that I bought that were commercially made.
So you build your own? I
build my own.
Nice. So that's a whole other side of the hobby.
Yeah, I'm disabled.
Okay.
So I'm on a very fixed income. My 2 Hustler HF mobile antennas only cost me about $45 for both of them from Ham Radio Deluxe, or Ham Radio Outlet, out of Plano, Texas. Their store out there. Because I have 2 of their stores within shipping. I got one from Denver and one from Texas. But 90%, my dipoles built. Both of my dipoles built. My phased quarter ground wave antenna is going to be built. My vertical VHF is all built. The telescoping antenna is their VHF, UHF from Super Antennas, but I built the whole system for that, base for that.
So
I want to really quick say this to your listeners.
Yeah, go ahead.
I live in an apartment, and I got all these antennas in my apartment.
So that's a whole nother wild card. So that's interesting, because I was actually going to talk about apartment dwelling with different antennas. So, boy, you're a treasure trove today.
But
this is great.
But the thing is even it doesn't matter if your listeners are in a HOA. There is a antenna and there is a way. Can't do nothing.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely an antenna out there. You just gotta get creative with it as well.
Because I even got I just bought 3 reels of coax, and I'm gonna put it up in my attic because my apartment has access to the attic.
Perfect. So that's another way of hiding it and getting some elevation on the antennas.
Yep.
So let's talk about the basic before we start looking at apartment side of that, because I'll pick your brain on that really quick. But setting up antennas, right? So let's go through fundamentals really quick. Like you want to set up an antenna. What's the first? I'm kind of leading into the questions here, and
That's
hopefully you
fine.
get where I'm going with them.
Yeah.
So
I
you want to
get
build
you.
an antenna, right?
Right.
You listen. What's the first thing you do? Like you want to build an antenna. Like let's go through the process, right?
I sit down and see what frequency I want to work.
Beautiful. That's where I was going with this one. Okay, so now you've got the frequency, and for example, let's just say it's for aviation, right? You want to listen to say 120 megahertz as the sweet spot, maybe 125.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there? Like, okay, I know I need a VHF antenna for 125 megahertz, 118 megahertz, whatever it's going to be. How do you move forward? Like, how do you know how to build it and how big to build it and what to build it out of?
First of all, I look at since airband is AM, it's a VHF frequency, but on the AM band. So I look at, there's three criterias I look at. I look at if I could build it, how much it's going to cost me for everything to build it, the vertical antenna. If I could get it commercially cheaper than building it, okay? And then is it going to fit within the confines of my apartment?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Right now, my airband, I have a repurposed commercial antenna mount, speaker stand mount that I use for my antenna mast.
Okay.
And if I fully tried to extend, it hits the roof. But once I pull the legs out, it'd be able. Mostly, I look at cost.
Yeah, I would imagine that's the big thing. Like you said, you're unlimited income, and that's really.
Yeah.
But I like what you said there. How much will it cost, and can I buy it cheaper? I mean, that's usually the one thing I forget about. It's like, yeah, I could build that. Like, I'll go ahead and do it. And it's like, oh, I should just bought it.
The two Hustler antennas I have, I could have built it, but for each of those being $20-something, it would cost me more because I would have had to get a whip.
Right.
I would have had to get the magnetic wiring to make the loading coil for it. Okay. I would have had to get all kinds of stuff for it. And it wind up being cheaper to buy it than it would to build. But 90% of my antennas are built from 14 gauge wire that I've had here at the house.
So materials cost you nothing almost.
Almost. Right. All that. I got one. I always keep on hand 3/4, 1/2 inch, and 1 inch PVC.
Okay.
And I always keep butterfly nuts, those in 1/4 inch, and bolts in 1/4 inch. So basically, all I have to do is use antenna modeling software to see about what I want to work.
Okay.
Because see, you don't really, on a receive antenna, you do not have to worry about like you would on a transmitted antenna. You do not have to worry about the SWR per se.
It's slightly, yeah, exactly. I mean, the better the SWR, though, the better tuned it should be, right?
No. Actually, I picked up my dipole. I picked up, without it being tuned, I picked up shortwave station out of Cuba.
Nice.
And I picked up the spice station out of Cuba. And now I'm here in Oklahoma.
And this is inside your apartment?
Yeah.
And is the dipoles vertical or horizontally polarized?
Horizontal.
Horizontal. So it runs like I guess I would picture
it's like the radials are in a T.
Right.
I have it going from north to south.
And that's running basically between where the wall meets the ceiling. That's you have it just tacked
pretty
up
much.
There. And how long is it? How long is each leg on that?
33 feet.
Okay. 33 feet. That's decent size.
My second one's 36 feet.
And that's nice. That's a big size antenna you got there.
I could get shortwave, HF, a VHF with that antenna. Not great on VHF, but I could get VHF with the dipole.
Very nice. And that's just made with the 14 gauge wire you have on hand? Not
14 gauge 14 gauge wire as the radials going feeding down to 14 silicone gauge wires that's attached to the Z port of my SDR.
Really, really nice. I always have a problem with shortwave and HF at my place. I can never figure it out if it's just my bad antennas or just a noisy area, but I think it's my bad antennas because
you live in the city.
I live in Long Island. We got a lot of RF out here, so it's tough.
Yeah, you would almost need a 1-to-1 or a 9-to-4 balance.
Yeah, exactly. I can't just plug into it. It's just too much. So let's. You touched on software. What software do you use? I used to use back in the day EasyNick, but I don't know if that's still the go-to. Is that what you use?
I haven't heard of it.
Okay.
Since I use my SDR for my scanner, I use SDR Uno, which is a proprietary software to SDR Play. You mentioned SDR Console.
Right.
I use that. I use HSDR. I use SDR Angel.
Okay.
Those are my go-to software as far as.
I was wondering because you said antenna modeling software, so that's what I was wondering.
Okay. I use a German-based website, and the software. Let me pull it up real quick. I forgot to pull it up.
No problem. So basically, you just drop in the frequency you want to use and the type of antenna, and it basically spits out the dimensions for you.
Well, actually, no. What it does is I draw out a dipole. Okay. I put my center feed line, and it spits out SWR measurements.
Nice.
It's not I'm gonna tell your listeners, it's not when you design it in that, it's not really a catch-all. It's not the final product. Okay. It's just giving you a certain, if I put it up like 10 meters up, and I use this material, this is going to be my SWR, this is how many ohms I got, etc., etc. It gives you a baseline of what, if you build it the way that you designed it, this might be your outcome. Okay. There's a lot of other antenna modeling software. There's a easy something that I can't remember the name.
EasyNick, I think, is what easy. Yep.
That's what a lot of older hams use.
Are you calling me old?
Hey, I'm 39, almost 40. Okay,
I'm just ahead of you. So, I've used that. That was good software too. We built a couple of antennas based off of there.
The problem I had with it, it's not very easy to
No.
GNL MMA. There's a guy that is an antenna maker called the DX Commander.
Okay.
And he mentioned it, and I've been using his software since then. Or the German company made it, but I've been using the free version. It's called MM2MANA-GAL.
So I'm sorry, it was MMGLA.
No, MMANA-GAL.
There it is.
I used their basic version, which is free to use.
Gotcha. We'll put a link to this in the session notes. So so MMANA-GAL, and then I guess you just drop in a calculator.
Because if you look, if I could show you, it's called Wire Edit Program, and it's got a grid on it, and I could draw out my antenna design. I'm in the middle of building a old World War II design antenna for a ham buddy of mine, and I'm the type of person I want to get some hard numbers before I build it.
Yeah, no, I understand, because you kind of like poking in the dark when it doesn't work. Like I many years ago, I thought that I could build myself a 2-meter 440 Yagi antenna for satellite work. And I built it based off of the Arrow antenna design, which was a handheld antenna for VHF, UHF.
Yeah.
And I had some plans for it, and I followed the plans, not really to a T. Instead of using 2x2 lumber, I used 1-inch PVC, and instead of using whatever it was, I used welding rod, and it just didn't work. The antenna fell flat on its face, and I could never figure out why. So
hey,
it went in the garbage.
Since you mentioned that. I recommend if your listeners ever build something that doesn't work, don't trash it, because I built a 2-meter Yagi for APT NOAA weather satellite. I couldn't get it to work right. I was having real bad RF down the coax and couldn't figure it out. And then I was just sitting staring at it. And then it dawned on me, just like that, what was the problem. I needed to build what's called an ugly balun with the wraps of the coax.
Yep.
To solve the problem. Right? Yep. Exactly. And the thing is I find a lot of, for your listeners, when I figure a lot of my antenna issues I have, because I have like a 60 megahertz buzz on my scanner for RF, RFI, which stands for radio frequency interference, and it doesn't hurt to put a ferrite bead or a 1-to-1 choke balun. If you're beating your head against the wall and you're getting all the static and interference from RF and stuff, just put a 1-on-1 or wrap up your coil around some 1-inch PVC pipe.
Yep, makes it nice and easy.
Yeah, it makes it nice and easy. Because I get a lot of questions from ham operators and shortwave listeners. How can I get rid of the RF? Well, just build a dirty balun. There's enough plans and YouTube videos,
Right. So. And again, that's a problem if you're transmitting or you got, a background and stuff like that. But if you're receiving only and you only have receivers in your shack, then, the chances of having something like that.
Actually,
are a lot
that's
less,
not
right?
true. That's
really?
not true.
Okay.
That's not true. Like I said, my handheld picks up a 60 megahertz hum.
Okay.
And it's interference from my icebox.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it depends on the frequency. Right. I was thinking like just in general all the time to the speaker, but yeah, you're right. On a specific frequency or something like that. Yeah. Totally. Yep.
My SDR, I have on 80 and 40 meters, I have 3 different 60 cycle hums.
I get that with seasonal. Like it'll knock out like 46 megahertz. Like only in the spring and the fall, but only for a couple of weeks. It just completely kills me down there.
Christmas is worse.
Oh, the Christmas lights. Yeah.
LED lights. Christmas lights.
All right. We'll be right back with the second half of my conversation with Andrew. And as a reminder, anybody who is a Patreon supporter at the $3 or a month level does not get this upcoming break. Everybody else will catch you in just a second.
I've actually, and this is what I'm going to tell people and what I'm going to recommend your listeners. I am in the process of writing a book about my experience with my building of antennas. And,
nice.
and in part of it, I talk about the dreaded 60 cycle hum. It could be your TV. It could be your plasma TV. It could be your lamp next. It could be your 2.5 gigahertz router for your internet.
Yep, been down that path multiple times. I had a power supply for my router was doing it. I mean, you find these things. It could be a neighbor's house too. It could be something coming from across the street.
Most of my interference I get on the airband is from my neighbors.
Yep.
And it drove me. I live upstairs, so I really can't. There's not much I can do about it. But I figure once I'm in the process of designing a choke balun to put up in my attic where I can hook more than one antenna in that choke, because I'm only going to be using one antenna at a time. So it's not going to hurt to have them all hooked up. But I'm going to do that and see if being up in my attic could help and with the choke.
So let's go back to building the antenna. So you've got the antenna, and obviously there's a formula to figuring out the length and the size of everything. And it's typically, was it 465 or 234?
If you're building a dipole, it's 468 divided by the frequency.
That's it. Yep. It's been a while.
That gives you a quarter wave.
Yep.
For a dipole, quarter wave dipole. You can build an in-fed dipole. You can build your offset Wyndham dipole. There's just a lot of dipoles.
Yep.
But I normally use my dipoles for airbands.
Okay. And then you find out they work really well, right? Because you've got them basically cut and tuned specifically for that VHF range that you want to receive.
Actually, I got them really wide band, because I not only use it for aviation. You got to remember, my dipoles I also use for shortwave and HF.
So the multi-band. Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's a multi-band antenna. That's why the one's 33 feet and the other one's at 36.
Okay. Very nice.
One of the best antennas I ever built was I took a SO239. Okay. Took a piece of 14 gauge solid ground wire.
Yep. I know this is going. This is a fun one.
I took the SO239, attached it to a end cap of a PVC. Ran up cut a piece of 1 inch, as long as, about 3 inches longer than what my thing. And I received broadcast, military, weather, and I was picking some odd station I couldn't remember that I couldn't figure out the band.
Right. So you basically made a ground plane antenna of it, right? Did you put the radials on the four corners?
No radials.
No radials. Okay.
That's just a straight vertical antenna attached to the center pin of the SO239.
So I didn't know where it was going, because that was one of the first antennas I built. Was just like what you were saying, though. You put the SO239, which is the female version of the PL259, right? And in the center pin, you solder in, a vertical, and then you use just a couple of screws and some nuts, and on the 4 holes in the corner of that SO259 plate, you put the radials on there, and then you got yourself.
And you bend at 45 degrees.
Yes. Yep. And you got yourself a homemade ground plane antenna that works fairly well.
Actually, when I bought this used handheld, that was the first antenna that I ever built. I took off the B&C vertical that was on it, that comes with all most standard handhelds, and I built that, and I was receiving in the next town over.
See, you're answering all my questions I have on paper here. I was going to say, what's your first antenna? What's the best antenna? And I think all I have left now is what's your favorite antenna? But I think that's the dipole that you built that's multi-band.
I don't know if that's my favorite, because that's
what's the favorite
that's
one
been a cursing in disguise, actually.
Gotcha.
It's a toss-up between my 2 800 Yagi face to Yagis.
Okay.
Direct fed, 3 element, or my just a regular direct fed single 2 element single direct fed on the director.
Okay, so you like building Yagis too. You build a lot of stuff.
I'm in the process of taking those 20 meters and 40 meter mobile sticks, and I'm getting a piece of L bracket, and I'm gonna make it. That's another thing I wanted to bring up real quick before it gets too late, is that if you ever ever find somebody that has the satellite dishes like DirecTV,
Yep.
get rid of the dish and keep the J-pole that it was on. That is
Yeah.
I have right now, I kid you not, at my dad's house, I have my GMRS on, J-pole on one. I have my Ecom antenna on one. I have both of my CBs on one.
Yeah, those make great antenna mounts. In fact,
Those make very great. And if you want to, if you're like me, a pack rat, and don't want to throw away anything, you can actually cut a slit in the dish itself,
right?
And drop a leg about 6 inches down and cut it like a upside down U, and attach a piece of coax, and you just made yourself a 2-meter antenna.
See, I had a whole bunch of extra dishes in my garage at one point, and I was going to use them for projects, and I got tired of holding on to them, and when I redid my garage, I tossed them. And like a year ago, I was kicking myself. So what I ended up using was I had my DirecTV dishes on the back of the garage, which is detached, and then my neighbor's tree grew and blocked my dish. So they came out and relocated the dish, and I made sure they left all the hardware behind. They didn't understand why, but I'm like, leave everything there, just relocate the dish. So I reused that J bracket basically to mount my weather station, because it had the support arm on there and everything else. So
that
it worked out well.
Just the other day on the farm, I just put one of the weather stations, one of the new ones that have came out within the last couple of months.
Okay.
On a J-pole.
Yeah, they work. They're great. I mean, they even have the bubbles in there sometimes in the top that lets you know you got level and plumb.
Yeah,
so,
and that's a good thing about those is that you could just about find them anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And especially out by you, I'm sure a lot of people are setting those up. So let's backtrack a bit. So we've talked about antennas for quite a bit here. I think you've got a lot of people excited to take on a project right now, because just by talking to you and understanding your passion for building these things and the success rate you've had. So if you could pick, I'll let you pick the band. So if you want to do VHF, UHF, or 800, I'll leave that to you. What is a very simple antenna that if somebody wanted to get their feet wet and build their very first antenna, what would you recommend that they build?
J-pole.
A J-pole antenna.
A J-pole, or another one that's called a Slim Jim that's made out of ladder line.
I've built the Slim Jim at a twin lead way back in the day.
I know a guy that is a licensed SAM operator and a certified skydiver, and he jumped with I think it was like 32-foot Slim Jim, HF Slim Jim.
Okay.
And made HF contacts.
While he was free falling.
He deployed a chute, but
okay.
but he was he just dropped it out below his feet.
Nice. So let's describe
one of those two.
Nice. So let's describe those. What is, I mean I know what one is, but I'm going to let you go through it, right? So describe the difference between the J-pole or the Slim Jim.
There ain't much difference.
Right. So how would you build one? Like how would you build, what makes the J-pole the J-pole, and how do you assemble it?
That's kind of hard to describe.
You want me to help you out?
No. A J-pole is what you think it is. It's if you were to take a letter J, and at the lower part of the J, put a piece of wire attached to one part and a SO239, then you have a J-pole. And I'm telling you right now, there's a lot. If you go to your favorite search engine, whether it's Google or Firefox or whatever, and type in J-pole calculator, you'll find a lot of. The only thing is you will have to buy end caps, copper end caps, something to sweat the pipe with, flux, solder.
Well, that's if you're building it out of plumbing pipe, right?
Well, that's how you build a J-pole.
See, I built a twin lead J pole.
Yeah, you can do. Well, that's what I was going to get
Slim
with
Jim,
when I talked with the Slim Jim because or there's a guy on YouTube that builds J poles.
Okay.
If I can't think of the name, he has KBR. Anyways, he builds a lot of, and he actually builds a J pole for a scanner.
Oh, nice.
For specifically for rail bands and air bands.
Okay. Yeah. So I built many years ago. I built a dual band J pole out of a 1/4 inch copper. And, that was an interesting project. It never made it on the roof. It ended up being too flimsy to go up there. There was an insulator in the middle, and we ended up using wood for it. And we ended up sweating the copper, and it burnt the wood. And we tried putting PVC, and it melted the PVC. And,
I tell most people if they're going to build a J pole, you can't go less than an inch.
Yeah, I think that was part of our problem. I mean, copper was always a little bit pricey, and then but we built one that was a single band one, and we threw it on my uncle's house, and it was up there for years and years and years, and finally the bracket that held it to the chimney failed before the antenna failed.
Yeah, yeah.
I
built one I've lived here in Oklahoma for almost 20-something years, and I got one that I built for him up in Missouri when I lived in Mount Vernon, Missouri, between Joplin and Springfield, and it's been up there for 18, 19 years.
Nice. And I've also, we go back to the Slim Jim with a twin lead J pole. That was one I built as a teenager when I was just getting into everything. And that was, I had the old paper document how to do it, but that was pretty simple. It's like you can't find that twin lead stuff anymore. That you used to use
not true.
Really? You can
ham
find
radio, ham radio outlet, DX
they still have that?
DX Engineer, amateur radio supply.
Okay. See, I'm not talking ladder line. It's not ladder line. It's the actual 300 ohm. Yeah, they still have
300
it. Okay.
Yeah, 300 ohm ladder line.
Beautiful.
I just bought 500 feet of it.
Oh, okay. But yeah, those were easy to put together too.
Yeah, if y'all want a good calculator, there's a guy that has a calculator for a Slim Jim and J-pole antenna calculator. His call is Mike 0 United Kilo Delta.com.
Okay.
He's a good bloke from the UK. I had a chance to meet him on over a meeting, but he has several. But if you look at it, both of them are simple. And it's like I tell everybody that wants to build an antenna, is that I could take any antenna I design and build for any band, any frequency, anytime.
Right.
When the disaster happens and I'm wanting to know what goes on around me and I want to take my scanner out, but I need an antenna, I can always take a J-pole or a Slim Jim or any antenna, Yagi or dipole, and still make an antenna and still be able to hear what's around me.
Right. And the best thing is too is you have understanding now of what makes or breaks the antenna design. So if you had to put something together, you could really MacGyver something if you had to, or repair an antenna. So let's before we wrap up too, let's talk more about the book that you're putting together. I want to go into that a little bit. So tell me more about what you're putting together.
I just got really tired of people saying that they can't put antennas up in their attics.
Okay. I got one in my attic. So you won't hear that from me.
Well, I got tired of hearing him says I can't do nothing. I can't do nothing but because I'm in a HOA. Okay.
Right.
HOA don't tell you what you're going to put up in your attic.
Right.
I know a lot of people in HOAs that have antenna. There is a vertical antenna for 2 meters that if y'all would Google on YouTube that a guy built to camouflage to sit on his back porch so he could talk on 2 meter ham band because he lives in a HOA.
Right. There was even one guy too. He had the vent antenna, right? That looked like the plumbing stack, the plumbing vent, and inside of it was a 2 meter 440 antenna. But yeah, there's tons of ways that you can get around, not get around, but work within the limitations of an HOA and all that.
Yeah, that's why I really just started into this book, because another good publication is Small Antennas by the ARRL.
Right. I might have that book. But
I have a PDF copy. If anybody wants it. I believe I have a PDF copy of it. If they just will get a hold of you, you can get a hold of me. But the thing is, it shows different types of dipoles you can put up in your house, and people, and like I said, people were giving me excuses. Well, I almost scrambled my brains. I said, dude, you scrambled your brains a long time ago. Don't give me that. But I've had to adapt. There's a Marine Corps saying, adapt and overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I had to do, because I wasn't going to pay the $500 to put a pole up.
Right.
At my apartment complex and everything. So that's basically in a nutshell how I'm writing the book, and talking about how I take basic stuff, random stuff I found or my dad's given me, like that speaker stand. And I use it for my base and my antennas. I've had this window mount for 15 years, for when I used to work with Freightliner, installing, when they used to put in actual CB antennas in the trucks.
Right.
When they sold mirrors, CBs in, So I mean,
nice.
Where there's a will, there's a way. I'm sorry.
Right. No problem. So you're writing the book now, so it's not available just yet, right? You're still in the process of putting the book together.
Yeah, because I have a hard time spelling and stuff. So I'm trying to get a friend of mine who's a well-known fictional author. She's a self-Amazon author. I'm trying to get her to help me with my book.
And is that the plan, though, to put it on Amazon and have it as a
Probably
digital
not.
download?
Probably not.
Okay.
I told my Elmer one time that if I wrote that book, that I'm not going to put it where somebody has to pay money for it.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Because the information I got was free. Okay.
So you're paying it forward. That's awesome.
That's what I want to do, because I want to. Some kid who might get their hands on the book might be the next me,
Right.
And I want to foster within, not just in our community as a scanner community, but in any SDR or any kind of stuff that has to do with radio. I want to just pay it forward, because there's been a lot of times that the scanner community has helped me just to been there for somebody to lean on. So
beautiful. That sounds really awesome. So listen, when you got the book ready, let us know, and we'll make sure that we get it out there so people can take a look at it and download it. So,
and I'll send you a signed copy.
Hey, beautiful. I appreciate that. But we'd definitely love to have you back to talk.
Oh,
we went through a lot of stuff today between the antennas and then the storm chasing. And then there was something else we had talked about. I got notes all over the place here. So it's crazy how many notes I got. I mean, I was surprised. But no, this was a great conversation.
I had fun. I really did.
Good. I appreciate that. So before we split, is there anything else you'd like to bring up on the podcast today?
Just remember, y'all, where there's a will, there's a way. If you want to build something, you won't know unless you build it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times I failed with my first dipole before I finally got it to work for what I wanted it for. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
And if you have to stare at it like I did for 9 months, trying to figure out how to get it to work, and then all of a sudden it dawns on you because you're staring at it again, then just take time, back up, look at it, I will definitely be willing to leave some contact information, and I can try to help y'all as much as possible.
Excellent. And we'll put that contact information in the session notes as well for the podcast. So beautiful. All right. So, Andrew, thank you very much for sharing your information on the podcast. And again, this is your idea, right? You came on and you said, hey, I want to be a part of the podcast. You went to scannerschool.com/guest and you filled out the calendar, and the process, was pretty easy, right? I mean, just a couple clicks and you were in, right?
Even if I did goof up the first time.
I wouldn't have known.
No, well, I mean, because I had my family first time I went to schedule, so
don't worry about it.
And guys, if you got any good ideas about podcasts or want to share something about scanners, don't hesitate to schedule. It took me 6 years. That's how long I've listened to his podcast before I even said, okay, I'll take the jump. I'll message and schedule. And I'm kind of glad I did it.
Oh, I'm excited you did. I love this was great.
Yeah, and I'll be more than happy to come on and share with you guys how I used scanner technology within storm chasing, because I got some pretty crazy stories about it.
Oh, beautiful. We'll definitely schedule that one in. Yeah. So, Andrew, thank you very much for being here today. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we will definitely talk soon. Thanks again. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your experiences with us. This was your idea. So thank you for bringing it to us. And I look forward to having you back on the podcast to talk about your past life as a storm chaser. You are a awesome storyteller. Just the stories you've told, just getting into the antenna building stuff. I can't imagine the stories that you will have as being a storm chaser. And again, hopefully we'll get you back on in the spring to talk about that. Now, if anybody else out there has built their own antennas, I want to hear, how has it worked out well for you? Because again, admittedly, I've had some flops when it came to building antennas. Yeah, monuments to failure, so to speak. Some of them might still be up at my rafters in the garage, and some of them might have just been recycled or sent to the great waste pile in the sky, so to speak. So, if you've built an antenna, let's hear about them. Join the conversation. Let Andrew and I know your experiences when it comes to building these antennas. You can do so by joining our Discord community. Again, scannerschool.com/Discord. And as a reminder, I am looking for questions for upcoming Ask Scanner School podcast episodes that air on the first Tuesday of every month. Pick up the phone right now and dial 516-308-2885 and leave me a voicemail, or go over our SpeakPipe link over at scannerschool.com/ask. Now, we want to help more people with the scanner radio hobby, and I can't do that without your help. So if you know of somebody that will benefit from this, please share the podcast episode with them. Please share this on social media, and please make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, because that is how we deliver each podcast episode, either to your podcast player, your inbox, or through your YouTube feed. Before we wrap up this week's podcast, I want to take a minute here to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Alan Gonzalez, Arthur Altrak, Arthur Heron, Bill Kay, Bob Rops, Bob Milton, Brandon Sammons, Brian King, Chris Paris, Craig Harper, Dan, Dave Dombrowski, Dave Pasco, David C., Denny Crotty, Dylan Hyder, Ed Walsh, Edward Bramlett, Glenn Wright, Greg Johnson, Guy Lee, I Hate Junk Mail, Jack Haycock, Jacques Berry, James Broxton, James Felling, Jay Reed, Jeff Block, Jeff Chapman, Jeff McLeod, Jenny Taylor, Jim B., Jim Heinrich, Joe Curtis, Joe P., John Cordoff, John Keel, John Sweeney, John Goldenberg, Joshua Robb, Ken Newberry, Kenneth Fowler, Kevin Zwicky, Lenny Bauer, Les Stevenson, Lloyd R., Mark Beebe, Michael Gorman, Michael Kroger, Michael Meadows, Mike Lopez, Mike Piltz, Nicholas Stenger, Paul Teal, Randy Lee Wright, Raymond Hill, Rich Palmieri, Ronnie Bach, Sal Marandola, Scott Lefgren, Terry Wright, Tim Mazet, Todd Glendy, and William Arcand. Find out more about Patreon and our support tiers by visiting scannerschool.com/Patreon. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you again next week. 73.